Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. Happy belated 4th of July to those in the US. Today I want to talk about something that is rumored. It is not verified at this point by any official sources, except for the departure of Milan Kovac, which did happen. That's an official thing that happened. But the rumors, and they're reasonably strong rumors, are that Optimus's production has been delayed by approximately 2 months, and that's going to have a significant impact on the landscape of humanoid robot development and the kind of competition that's developed between many companies and many countries, including the US and China. So let's take a look at the original article that sparked this all, and then discuss the veracity of these claims, and then talk about some of the consequences. So on July 2nd, as you saw, the Humanoid Hub posted this article, and if you don't follow the Humanoid Hub, I highly recommend it. It's a good X channel. They're usually right on target and very accurate about their claims, so I think this gives it pretty reasonable credence that they're talking about this. But again, let's remember that this is all speculation at this point, so I don't want anybody to get ahead of themselves with all of this. Anyway, as you can see, the title of this article is Tesla has paused Optimus production to revise its design. The redesign could take around 2 months, according to the Chinese outlet Late Post Auto. Musk's mass production goal for this year is basically out of reach. That is a major consequence of this 2-month pause, if it actually is true. According to sources in China's supply chain, Tesla is making focused adjustments to the hardware and software design of its humanoid robot Optimus, and paused component procurement for the robot about 2 weeks ago, so that would be mid-June-ish, somewhere in there. 2 suppliers confirmed that Tesla has not explicitly canceled component orders, but will only confirm a new mass production schedule and resume procurement after the design revision is complete. The redesign could take around 2 months. As of the end of May, Tesla had purchased enough parts to build 1,200 Optimus units and had produced nearly 1,000, so that's actually a fairly big claim right there. We didn't know that they had produced anywhere close to that number of Optimi. Musk previously promised to produce 5,000 units by the end of this year. With the halt in component procurement, both sources believe that goal is now unlikely to be achieved. And this relates to one fact that we definitely know. This adjustment started in early June with the departure of Milan Kovac, the original head of the Optimus project. According to one supplier, Tesla's vice president of AI software, Ashok Elliswami, has taken over the Optimus project and wants to improve the design before ramping up production. So of course, Milan leaving, we definitely know about that. Ashok taking over, again, that's a rumor, that's speculation. If that's true, the man, I don't even know how he has enough hours in the day to do this, because remember that June 22nd and then June 26th, we had the robotaxi rollout and then the first self-delivered car to a customer in the Austin area. Ashok is in charge of Tesla AI, which is in charge of robotaxis and the self-delivery and things like that. So I just don't know when the guy sleeps. So I feel really bad for him if he's in charge of all of this stuff. But on the other hand, he seems to be exceptionally good at leading this crew. And Optimus, of course, is related to these other efforts because, of course, they all have to have a brain and everything. But cars, in terms of being robots, are much simpler, much more straightforward than humanoid robots in terms of the output space, in terms of the mechanics. You know, a car is it's just 4 wheels and the steering wheel, brakes, accelerator, right? That's relatively straightforward compared to all these fingers, arms, head, etc. There's a lot more complexity in the output space. And of course, Ashok's education is actually skewed towards robotics, so it is right up his alley. It's not that he can't do this, and in fact, I think he will do a fantastic job. It's just I worry about the amount of stress he must be under with all of these things happening at once. So anyway, Ashok, if you're watching this, good luck to you. I hope you're getting some rest and getting to spend some time with family. But continuing on here, according to Tesla's feedback to suppliers, Optimus still faces several hardware issues: overheating joint motors, low payload capacity for dexterous hands, short transmission lifespan, and limited battery life. Tesla is still testing samples from multiple dexterous hand suppliers, trying at least 3 different technical approaches. So let's break this paragraph down just a little bit. So number 1, overheating of joint motors. Those are the actuators, wrist, hip, shoulder, all of that kind of stuff. One of the big problems with motors in general, that's both gas motors and electric motors, is heat, right? When you do something, when you spin the motors around, either through burning gas or through pumping electricity through it, you produce a lot of waste heat. So one of the big problems with motors is actually heat dissipation. It's very, very challenging to get rid of that, especially when you start putting things in very, very confined spaces. Like imagine the forearm and the wrist and the hand of a humanoid bot. It's got to be able to do a lot of dexterous activity, which we're going to get to in just a second, without overheating. So that can be very challenging. And even in the torso and the legs and stuff, because those motors are huge, to be able to make the actual bot, that weighs 75 kilos or so, be able to walk around. So anyway, overheating is an obvious problem that you would need to solve. It's a little unfortunate they're still dealing with this, but that really comes along with the fact that they're having to put things in smaller and smaller spaces in terms of being inside of a humanoid type body. Next up, we have low payload capacity for dexterous hands. That means, hands that can do this kind of thing, that can play the piano or be able to move in a very dexterous manner, pick up a bottle or something along these lines. The payload capacity is also important. You need to be able to pick up, say, 50 pounds or 22 kilos or something along those lines. You need to be able to pick up something like that to be able to do useful factory work or even useful household work. You have to not only have dexterous hands, but you have to have hands that can pick up and carry heavy objects. Next up is one of the favorites of Dr. Scott Walter, and that is short transmission lifespans. In other words, if you have these things doing a lot of activities, you've got to have these actuators spin up quickly and then spin down quickly, right? If you're moving the arm, you have to be able to move the arm rapidly and then stop it. And that creates a lot of torque on the actuators and the transmissions as it has to spin up quickly and spin down quickly. So short transmission lifespans, that's a significant problem if you want a robot that's not just a lab curiosity, but is able to work in a real environment and put in hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of hours of actual useful work. And then last but not least, we've got limited battery life. We've got, if you've got only a certain number of kilowatt hours, maybe 2 or 3 kilowatt hours in the humanoid robot, and it's working really hard to move these actuators around, and they're producing a lot of waste heat, which is not very useful work, but that comes out of the battery life. And then also running a very power consuming neural network on the hardware 4 chip or AI 4 chip, or maybe the AI 5 chip that's probably even more power hungry. You could eat through that battery really quickly. If you can only get an hour or 90 minutes or 2 hours of useful work out of the battery pack and then have to recharge the Optimus robot, that makes it a lot less useful than if you can get 6 or 8 hours out of it. Next, we have an unverified statement, but if this is true, this is actually very concerning because we saw this months and months and months ago, maybe over a year ago, that Tesla Optimus was moving batteries around in the factory and it's still only half as efficient as a human worker. That is a major concern, that it's not doing more complex tasks and it's not working faster. So that's a significant concern if it proves to be true. But again, we've got one Tesla insider. That doesn't really give us a great deal of confidence about that. Then we get to the supply chain, and the supply chain is very, very important for mass producing anything. Of course, a humanoid robot, but also a car or anything else that might be mass produced. Tesla has been developing robot hardware with hundreds of supply chain partners for 3 years, creating a full humanoid robot supply chain. So that's very important. You don't just magically get these robots out of nowhere. You have to order all the raw materials to make these things. The Optimus R&D team exceeded 400 members by the end of last year, so that's actually a significant group of people. At a cost of around $60,000 per unit, in other words, per Optimus, Tesla's component expenses for Optimus this year alone were expected to surpass $300 million. So you can multiply that. Easily they could be spending $1 billion in 2025 on the Optimus project, probably more than that, honestly. Next, we get none of the suppliers we spoke with had questioned Mr. Musk's mass production plans until now. Quote, at the beginning, we were hesitant, said a senior executive from a Tesla supplier. Quote, if you don't believe in it, but others do, the opportunity is theirs. You not only have to believe, but believe earlier than others. So in other words, what this person is saying is that you have to jump on board with this. If Tesla says they're going to do something like this and you're hesitant and you're like, ooh, I don't want to commit to that, somebody else will do that instead of you and you lose the opportunity. But that also places you in a risky position, because if you put in a ton of work to develop a part, an actuator, a camera, a control board, a whatever, it doesn't really matter what it is. If you put in a lot of developmental work to create that part and then Tesla doesn't mass produce it, you've spent a lot of money on that without being able to amortize it over thousands or hundreds of thousands of units, which is what your hope is, of course. And then finally, a little tidbit here. One of the earlier supply chain sources added that Tesla may debut Optimus Gen 3 at this year's shareholder meeting. That would be a reasonable time to do something like that, create a little wow factor for things. I have not heard. Has anybody heard? Usually it's in the July, August timeframe, and I haven't heard at this point when the shareholder meeting is going to be. So if you have, definitely let me know in the comments. All right, so how reliable are these sources? The Humanoid Hub is pretty reasonable, but we've also got posts from Electric, which has a very anti-Tesla bias. We've got Drive Tesla Canada, which is pretty reasonably positive about Tesla. We've got Tom's Hardware. All of these are within a few days of each other, and they may all just be feeding on each other. So in other words, this original Humanoid Hub post might then be taken by Electric, Drive Tesla Canada, and Tom's Hardware and these other sources and just be regurgitating the same thing over and over again. So again, we just just have to take this all with a grain of salt until we hear something official. But if this is borne out, this is definitely a concern for Tesla because this space is moving very, very rapidly and it's extremely competitive, with Figure in particular in the United States really running quickly and doing a great job, and then a ton of different companies in China also doing a fantastic job and moving ahead really quickly. So a 2-month slowdown doesn't sound like that much, but it pushes Musk's plans of producing 5,000 of these robots by the end of the year. Probably that's not going to happen. It's going to be pushed back for a while. Honestly, if the design is poor, it's better to take a break for a minute and actually figure it out and make the design work before you go into mass production. That is part of the trial run thing. So none of this is devastating, but it could put Tesla on the back foot. It could put them in a catch-up position instead of being at the lead, which is a position they're not particularly used to being in. So it'll be interesting to see how the team reacts to this, if this is all true, to see how the Tesla AI and robotics team reacts to all of this, whether they really redouble their efforts and try to create something amazing with a Gen 3 Optimus or a Gen 3.5 Optimus. If they have to really rework Optimus, I'll be particularly interested in the hands. I'm sure Scott will be as well. The hands are really that's all that really matters about humanoid robots. The rest of it is just a little trickery. You need the legs and the body and the vision system and everything to get the Optimus robot to move from point A to point B to do something useful, but 90% of the usability of the robot will be in the hands. We'll be picking up objects, moving things around, lifting heavy things, and being able to have enough battery power to last for, let's say, 6 hours. I think 6 is probably the minimum, 4 maybe, but really reasonably, you'd kind of want it to last 8 hours if at all possible on one battery charge, because that is a normal working shift. And then you'd basically just need 2 of these per day if you wanted to work 24 hours. You'd have one work 8 hours, then it would go charge, the other one would take its place, and then it would come back and work another 8 hours, and they would keep shifting back and forth. So 2 humanoid robots at about 8 hours of capacity for the battery would be able to work 24 hours a day without stopping. Is that possible? I don't know at this point. That's a big ask. These are relatively small batteries that you can carry in a humanoid robotic space, but if you can, that makes these things quite economically viable. If you can't, they become a little bit more of a curiosity and less of a useful replacement for humans just yet. So what are some of the consequences, assuming this is a verified rumor? Number one, the 5,000 to 10,000 units at the end of 2025 is highly unlikely at this point. If there are 1,000 made, but they're basically going to have to scrap those and start over again, you can count those 1,000, right? It doesn't matter. They may be scrapped, but you can still count them. But if you take a 2-month delay, we're talking about, let's say, the beginning of September or something, that only leaves you 4 months to ramp it back up again. It's unlikely they'll produce more than 1,000 more by the end of 2025. So we're probably looking at more on the order of 2,000 units by the end of the year as opposed to 5,000. So that's definitely going away. So like I said, they will probably spend $1 billion or more on Optimus development this year. And if you think about the consequential nature of being able to produce humanoid robots, that seems like a pretty reasonable expense. But the question is, do they have the right team together? Do they have the right suppliers? Do they have the magnets at this point with the whole tariff brouhaha? Many companies in the United States do not have the rare earth metals to make the magnets that they need for the actuators. So that could also be part of the cause of the slowdown as well. Of course, in the article, we get the suggestion that Optimus Gen 3 might be out for the shareholder meeting. Let me know in the comments whether you think that is actually going to come to pass or not. Even if it's just a demo version of it, I think that's a reasonable likelihood. And maybe one of the reasons they haven't announced a date yet at this point, because they want to be able to talk about that. Because if you haven't seen the deliveries for Q2 of 2025, were pretty dismal. You can check out that video up here. But Tesla's going to need something good to talk about at their annual shareholders meeting, and nothing like trotting out a demo model or 2 of the Gen 3 Optimus to make people get pretty wowed. As far as consequences for other robotics manufacturers like Boston Dynamics, like Figure, like Apptronik, etc., this presents an opportunity for them because Tesla has stumbled a little bit if there is this pause, which means that they have a chance to, overtake and get ahead of where Tesla is at this point. Will this have a massive effect in the long term? I don't know. If it's only 2 months, I kind of doubt it. I think Tesla will catch back up again. And again, it's not like these other companies haven't made mistakes about all of this stuff too. Everyone is trying to define together together the sort of correct humanoid robot, the correct actuators, the correct joint placement, the correct joints, the correct hands. All of that kind of stuff is sort of being developed simultaneously by all of these companies, and there will be many, many missteps. So this is not the end of the world for Tesla by any means, but again, it does put them a little bit on the back foot, and they have to do some catching up at this point. And of course, Tesla's ability to mass manufacture, their integration of hardware and software and everything still give them a really big advantage, but they don't have quite the advantage that we might have imagined a year or 18 months ago with the Optimus robot. So where does this leave us? Again, if this is true, this leaves Tesla in a situation where they have to play a little bit of catch up. I would hope that during the Q2 2023 earnings call that Elon and others will have a chance to talk about this delay and what's going on, and talk about the Gen 3 redesign of Optimus. If they do a good job with the Gen 3 redesign, if they take this opportunity in the pause in production and really look at what did and didn't work in terms of mass production of the Gen 2 Optimus, then this could actually be highly advantageous to Tesla. And even though it would put them behind temporarily, it might really put them in a place where they could sort of leapfrog over other companies that might not have taken a break and redesigned their robot as carefully. So they have the opportunity to actually move ahead of the pack again after the delay and everything. So it's a weird situation where, again, there's just so many potential dead ends to go down because there are so many unknown unknowns in creating a humanoid robot. Nobody has ever done it before. So hopefully by the 2025 shareholders meeting, we will be able to see a Gen 3 Tesla bot, and we'll be able to look at it and figure out if Tesla has used this opportunity to create something substantially better and more mass manufacturable. If they have been able to do that, then I think they're in good shape. If they haven't and they're still playing catch up with their Gen 3 model, then things might be looking a little bit sour for Tesla. So for all of us Tesla investors and Tesla enthusiasts, I hope that the Gen 3 Tesla bot shows how Tesla has used this opportunity to create something amazing. Alrighty, folks, that's what I've got. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. And while you're down there, if you don't mind liking the video, it really helps other people to find it. And of course, if you want more content like this, please do consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.